Okay, hello folks. So, this is going to be my first video on WeakAuras. A lot of people have asked me to do something about WeakAuras, so I'm going to start with a video on the basics, and maybe later on I can do some more videos on the more complicated styles of WeakAuras, or, my own setups, and maybe how you might want to do it for yourself. So, WeakAuras, it's usually under WeakAuras 2 in an add-on list, or Curse, for example, if you're using that. Is a fantastic add-on that allows you to track a whole bunch of things, basically anything that you want. It's super useful because, so for example now I can see I have Pride House running, but the distance that my eyes have to travel from am I standing in fire to my raid frames, which are usually down here, who needs healing, all the way up to, oh god, is that buff running, and then, oh no, is my cooldown running? It's a lot of distance, it's a lot of stuff that you're going to miss on the way, and it's a lot of faffing about to have to try and see what's what. WeakAuras kind of fixes all that problem. Obviously now, I don't have any WeakAuras up because I'm not in combat, but if I was to annoy this angry tiger here, you'll see I have a whole bunch of icons up. This one here is going to be telling me when my revival is available, so if I was to click that, there we go, my revival is now available in 3 minutes. This one here tells me that I've forgotten to pop my augment rune, so I click that, the buff's on now, and that goes away, leaves me alone. All the others I'll probably cover later on, but for now let's get rid of Mr. Angry Tiger and talk about how to make a WeakAura. We'll start with something really basic. We're going to just do the most basic tracker I have, which is for Renewing Mist. So you want to start by typing /WA, which opens up WeakAuras. You'll see that I have a few, and to those who are thinking this isn't that much, this is a group, which each group contains this sort of number of WeakAuras. So I have a few, but for now obviously you won't have any if this is the first time you've got it. You want to be clicking on New, and you get a whole bunch of options. Firstly, you have From Template, which is a great way to start if you quickly don't really know what you're doing and you just want to go, what does WeakAuras recommend? What does it say I should do? But I always like making them myself. As a general rule from here on out, if I don't cover something, assume that A, it's either pointless, or B, it's too complicated and isn't really what you want for something as basic as just making a single tracker. So the ones you're most likely to care about are text and icon, but we're going to start with icon for now. Nice and simple, you click it, and it gives you a brand new WeakAura to start with. So you want to name it, so for now we're just going to call it Test, which I managed to spell incorrectly. And you have a frankly terrifying looking list of options, which is what usually puts a lot of people off WeakAuras, but I will go through it bit by bit. It's so much easier than you think. You want to start with Trigger. Trigger is what this WeakAura is for. Everything else you can technically ignore, and the WeakAura will do what you tell it to if you've made the trigger correctly. For now I'm just going to cover single trigger WeakAuras, but it is possible to have WeakAuras that trigger only if you have these specific 14 buffs with this specific amount of time left and all that sort of thing. You can do that, but I'll cover that later on if people want to do more WeakAura stuff. So to start with, you want to choose a type. You have 4 options: Aura, Custom, Event, and Status. Aura is if you're interested in any kind of buff or debuff. So the one earlier that I mentioned that tracks my Defiled Augment rune, that is an Aura tracker. Custom, you will just know it's way too complicated, you have to code it yourself. An event is very rarely useful. Status is pretty much everything else, so if you click on status, you get to pick what kind of status. You can do things like health and power, so if you wanted a tracker for your health or for your mana or your combo points or all that sort of stuff, you can do that. But for now, we're looking at the cooldown progress of a spell, so we'll click on that. First option, ignore rune cooldown. I'm not a Death Knight, I don't care. If you are a Death Knight, then that's something you can consider. Show global cooldown, nice and simple. If I was to start casting something, you see the little global cooldown on spells. Do you want that to show up? For most spells, yeah, you do, because they're on the global cooldown. But some here, like some cooldowns, they're not on the global cooldown, so you might not want that. For this, Renewing Mist is on the global cooldown, so we will put it yes. Then you want to put the spell in. So, nice and simple, no fancy stuff required. Typing Renewing Mist, hit enter. It has found the spell, and it has automatically put in a nice pretty icon that matches my Renewing Mist. Just a quick side note, if you're going to do this for a spell that you're tracking, you must currently be able to cast the spell. It can be on cooldown, that's fine, but it has to be available to you. So for example, if I wanted something that tracked my chi wave here, I couldn't do that right now. If I type in chi wave, although it's a completely legit spell, it won't find it, because I can't currently use it. But if I was to quickly swap into chi wave, I type this in, it's now available. So just make sure that whatever you're tracking, you are able to currently use. You'll notice there, though, when I swapped back, it hasn't got rid of the weak aura. That can be really important later on. But for now, we're going to go back, and we're going to change this to Renewing Mist. Now, if I want this weak aura to only show when my Renewing Mist cooldown has 2 seconds left, this is how I would do it. I would say, the trigger is here if my cooldown for Renewing Mist has 2 seconds. Done. Nice and simple. If I wanted to do this for a charge spell, so down here we have my Chi Torpedo, I could click this and say, only show me this icon if I have 2 charges of this spell. Obviously this isn't a charge spell, not relevant. Show cooldown of charge, I still to this day have no idea what that does. Down here you have show, which is a really important one, and I can almost guarantee you will forget about it and then wonder why the hell your weak auras are disappearing. You want to you want to decide whether you want the weak aura to show always, only when the spell is on cooldown, or only when the spell is not on cooldown. I like to put it on always, because then I can change later with conditions what happens when it is or isn't on cooldown. For now though, that trigger is done. This trigger will show me the cooldown of my Renewing Mist, plain and simple. Obviously, it's a bit clunky at the minute, it's a bit big, it has numbers on it. Let's change that. So you go into display. First off, it's not going to be much good at showing me the cooldown unless it's showing me the bloody cooldown. So here, you tick cooldown, and it shows you an example. Now you'll notice that this seems to be draining of colour, kind of like how a buff drains over time, but if I was to use Renewing Mist, it fills with colour. So you want to make sure you click inverse here, so that it's filling up as a cooldown rather than going down as a buff. You then have show cooldown text, which are these numbers here. Let me know if you don't know how to get those up and you want them. It's in the WoW settings. You can simply click this, and then you don't have to fiddle around with text settings. It'll just copy it straight from your bars, nice and simple. Automatic icon is a great one to leave ticked because it usually works. Sometimes you'll have something that shares names. So for example, if you're tracking something as simple as Enrage, then you might have the problem that it's going to suggest an icon that isn't what you want. In that case, you can untick this, choose an icon, type in whatever you want. So if I was to put in Mist, and it gives you a whole bunch of icons that you can pick from. But this is working how we want it, so automatic icon is fine. Desaturate makes it black and white, glow makes it glow, plain and simple. As I said earlier, because we've got the cooldown text, we can untick text. If you want to do stuff with stacks and all that kind of stuff, or you wanted to do some text like you would see here, for example, hidden behind here I have summon statue to remind me, you can do that later on, but for now, basic stuff, not needed. Ignore all that. And then you simply set your width and height, just type the numbers in. I have them at 40, because it's nice and pretty. All your anchors and all that you can ignore unless you want to be really, really fancy with where things sit and how they move. But if you want it to just stay in one position, you can ignore that, and then pick where it goes. If you are a horrid Neanderthal who does not care about anything, then you can just drag it to wherever you want. But, I mean, come on, we want to be pretty, so you set the numbers yourself. Put them to the nearest, nice and simple. Now, all we've done here is gone into trigger, picked a cooldown of a spell, told it the spell, set it to do it always, put your cooldown ticks in, and change the size. That's all we've done. It's nice and simple, really easy, but if I was to close this down, there's the weak aura. It works completely fine, and if I click Renewing Mist, there we go. It tracks the cooldown for me. That's the most basic way to make a weak aura. But while I have you, let me convince you that making pretty things is good. So you can open it back up and head into this. You'll have seen there that this was there all the time, which can be really awkward. So if you head into load, you can tick this so that it will only load when in combat. All of these options are together, so for example, if I tick all of these, it will only load in combat, in a vehicle, in pet battle, and so on. So it's not this or this. And if you go through them, you have never, which is plain and simple. I don't want to delete this weak aura, but I don't want it to ever come up. Nice and easy. Vehicles, if for some reason you want a weak aura in a vehicle, or pet battle, if you're Viri and you want a pet battle weak aura. You can set this to in groups, so only show this if I'm in a raid. you know, if you're out world questing, you don't really give a crap about your cooldowns. There you go. Put it so that this only comes up when you're in a raid. You can also here, if you double-click them, say only if I'm in a group or in a raid. Nice and easy there. Player name and realm and all that. It's an overcomplicated way of doing this, which is player class. So I'm a monk. I really don't care about renewing mist cooldowns when I'm playing a warlock, for example. So I only want this to come up as a monk. But equally, I don't care if I'm playing in Windwalker. So click on talent spec, choose my healing specialization. There we go. Now this will only show up if I am in combat on a monk, and on a monk that is spec to Mistweaver. The good thing about doing it this way is if I change my name, I race change, or I even make a monk on another server, this will still work. I don't need to make new WeakAuras for that one. It will work all wonderful and fine. For those of you out there who play multiple classes and want to track something such as a trinket that you might have, or for healing specs you have Velens on all of them, you can double-click this and say only load when I'm on a monk, a mage, or a hunter. So a useful one is if you want a mana bar tracker, because your UI doesn't show it for whatever reason, then okay, only show this when I'm on a druid, monk, priest, shaman. But obviously, I'm going to leave this just as monk for now. Angry tiger. Bad. Back into here. Where were we? Cool. So, the next one is talent selected. You can tick this to only load this up if you've picked a certain talent, or if you double click it, any of these specific talents. This can be really good if, like earlier, you want to track Chi Wave. You don't want this coming up if you're spec'd into Chi Burst for that fight, so you can set this to only load if you've taken that specific talent. You can do this for PvP talents, you can for some reason do this for race and for faction, so if you only want this on your Horde characters, or if you only want this on characters under level 20, for example. You can do this for Zone ID. Those of you who want to be really, really fancy, you can look up the Zone ID for Antorus, or the Zone ID for, I don't know, your class hall or whatever, and then you would be able to put this in so that this would only load up when you're in Antorus. Same for Encounter ID, you'll see it gives you a whole list of them here. If I was to tick this and put in 2063, this WeakAura would only load on Agrimar. This can be really useful for those of you who are quite bad at noticing debuffs. So let's say on Varimathras, you don't really notice when you have the Necrotic Embrace. You could tick this and type in 2069, it would only load when you're on Varimathras. Then if you were to make a WeakAura that only appeared when you were debuffed with Necrotic Embrace, you can put it smack bang in the middle of your screen. I might show you later on that you can make it glow, shout at you, dance, shake about, all of that stuff. And you can make it really obvious to you. You no longer have to keep glancing to your debuffs and going, oh god, have I got the Embrace, am I going to kill people? You can just set it up so that only on Varimathras, if you get that debuff, a nice little icon will pop up and go, run out. You can even put text. It's what I do for a lot of my raid leading stuff. I'll have it pop up and it'll remind me, hey, this is the yellow one. That means tell people to run out. Which is a little secret to how you all think I'm a good raid leader. I'm not, I just use WeakAuras. You have the same for instance type and instance difficulty, if you only wanted it to come up in a 40-man raid, or if you only wanted it to come up in Mythic, or if you only want to come up when you're healing a dungeon. This is all of that for load. Seems like a lot of stuff, but mostly I just ignore it. I usually just put in class, spec, and sometimes talent. There's only a couple that I have for PvP only, or for raid only. After that, you can look at, let's go with conditions. So you'll see that although this works perfectly fine, so if I close this now, it's disappeared, lovely, and if I go over to this nasty tiger man here, he'll hit me, and now it appears, and it tracks it just fine. Hi, Mr. Tiger. But you'll have seen there that a lot of my WeakAuras, they glow like this. They have extra little effects onto them, some of them pulse, and some of them dance about. Those are because of conditions. Conditions let you say, if this is happening, change this about the WeakAura. So for Renewing Mist, it's a really important spell, and you can do this for, I would recommend doing this, for a lot of your cooldowns. If you're the kind of class where using a DPS cooldown on cooldown is really important, then you can set up a WeakAura and add a condition like this. You say, if on cooldown is true or false, you can go either way, and you can also pick all these other stuff. If you have 2 stacks of something, if you have only 2 seconds left on your debuff, for example. But for now, if on cooldown is false, meaning it is available, then what do I want it to do? You can change any of these things. What I like to do is go glow. Nice and simple. And then what that will do, if I go and annoy another tiger again... Oh, he's running off. No! Here we go. If I annoy this tiger, it now glows. And when I cast it, the glow disappears. But you'll see here, I've done some extra stuff with mine. So I'll show you what that one is. You go into conditions, you add another condition. Now, I want this to, if it's on cooldown, I want it to desaturate. I want it to grey out. I don't care about it. If I can't cast it, I don't want to see it. And then, I also kind of want to make this smaller. So I'll drop this down. This is what I do for almost all of my WeakAuras. I set them to shrink and go black and white. That means that when I'm looking at this area on my screen, which is where all of my UI is based, I can see everything. If I open this, my raid frames usually go here. I can see every single person in the raid, how their health is going, what they need, and then with just a little glance up, I can see everything about my abilities and am I stood in fire. That is the most important part of my screen, this box here. So this way, I want to make sure that this goes away, it shrinks down, it becomes black and white, and it's not taking attention away from me. I only want something glowing and bright and in my face if it's something I should be casting. So that's how I've set that up, and now I will show that off for you. If I find yet another poor tiger in the monk order hall, nice and glowing, I cast the spell, smaller, dark, faded away. It's distant, I don't notice it, until it comes the time... Oh, there we go, go again, click it. So, that is the most basic way of setting up a WeakAura, and how I would recommend you get started and make yourself some trackers. I'll probably make some more videos on this later on how to do some stuff, but let me know if there's anything specific you want to see. Bye!